Welcome to Creative Caregiving and Beyond. More and more people are having to become caregivers for their elderly loved ones, and navigating this journey can be really difficult. This podcast will provide guidance and give practical tips for your family. Your host is Wendy Whiteman, elder law attorney, author, speaker, and leading insight advisor in senior protocol and senior lifestyle trends. Know that you are not alone in getting the help that you need. Let's get started. And here's Wendy.
Well, welcome to another episode of Creative Caregiving and Beyond. Today we have a special guest. We're going to continue our CEO spotlight. We have Nicole Gann from Juliette Fowler Communities. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's super exciting.
Well, I've enjoyed talking to you off camera as well, and we're just going to continue our conversation because we were really going.
We were.
Yes. It's so refreshing to know that, you're a CEO, but I could tell that your heart is for people.
Oh, thank you.
And sometimes when we hear that huge title as Chief Executive Officer, we think of someone sometimes that doesn't necessarily have their feet on the ground and that are not necessarily dealing with the families and the people that they're representing. Mm-hmm. But I can tell that you, just by our conversation, you know exactly what's happening with the families in your communities. And I'm very impressed with that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of effort sometimes, to show up and, like you said, be with people.
Yes.
But one of our values is to love people. We say, who do we love? All people. When do we love them? All the time.
Wonderful.
And
I love that.
That propels you, right?
Yes.
And it makes you want to be with people because it's a great time in their life. And so I love being there for it.
Well, tell me a little bit about the history of Juliette Fowler Communities.
It's so great. I never get tired of telling this story. So we are going to be celebrating our 130th year.
130
yes,
years?
130 years.
Wow.
We were born from the vision of Juliette Peak.
Okay.
Fowler was her married name. The Peaks were a founding family in Dallas. Juliette is buried in the cemetery outside the convention center. That's how far her family goes back. But Juliette really had a storied life. She was Dallas's first May Queen. She's credited as Dallas' first philanthropist. And she just had a beautiful life. But tragically, before the age of 25, she had lost her husband in a land duel with the Tarrant County Sheriff.
Oh, my goodness.
And both her children to the childhood diseases of that time.
Wow.
We think this is the 1800s. And her response to that grief, and this is the beauty of Juliette's story and why we have the value of love people, is she chose to love her community. That's how she responded to her grief. Wow. And she realized that her affluency really protected her in a way because she looked out into her community and saw orphans and saw widows that were destitute if they didn't have that core family to support them. So she started the rest of her life's mission of caring for others. She took in an orphan child from her church, and she started asking her church family, well, what can we do in this community for widows and orphans? Wow. And she was so committed to it that she admitted herself to what was called a sanatorium at the time to learn about what care was like for people who had to go into those environments. And
that is amazing.
Right? I mean, talk about a pioneer,
yes,
right? And
yes.
we have a Visionary Women Luncheon in her honor specifically because of her vision. But in the 1800s, she did that. We would call that searching for best practices today in the industry, right?
Yes.
And so she was going to create this model. And so began the dream of a home for orphans and widows. Wow. Sadly, she loses her life in her early 50s for something that would be completely treatable today, an ear infection.
You're kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But in comes another powerful woman in the story, and it's her sister, Sarah Hartwood. And, if you have sisters or siblings, you know the power of that relationship.
Yes.
And Juliette was very detailed in her will. She left us 15 acres in East Dallas that we reside on today.
Okay.
And $4,500 and a very detailed instruction of what she wanted to have created, the home for orphans and widows. And her sister persevered. Now keep in mind, 1800s, okay? It was a man's world for sure.
For sure.
And Dallas was growing and becoming, the city that it is today. And people wanted that land. We're only 2.5 miles from downtown.
That's right.
If you imagine.
Prime territory.
Prime territory.
Yes, it is.
So Sarah was like, she took on all comers. She was like, no, We're doing this. And she charted us in 1892 and served as our first president. And the other thing that Sarah did that was so impactful is she created our covenant relationship with the disciples of Christ. It's the same relationship Texas Christian University has. We're the only two organizations that have that relationship. So Sarah was also a visionary in business as far as setting in motion strategic partnerships. Before the words ever existed, she was creating that for us. And to this day, we continue to serve elders and at-risk children. So that intergenerational mission still lives on. It's adapted in the ways of society today, but it's still an outward look in our community to say, hey, who needs help? And how are we going to show up and serve them? And we're still making that call to church families and making that call to community, making that call to ourselves. How are we going to show up? So we coined the phrase #BeJuliette, because anytime, we feel like we don't know if we can figure it out or go on, we just said, what would Juliette and Sarah do? Because listen, if they made it work in the 1800s,
yes.
I'm pretty sure we can get it done today.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I can't help but believe that Juliette and Sarah would have been just very proud to have you as the CEO,
thank you.
But to carry on.
I hope that's true. I always say I'm standing on the shoulders of all those that came before me, and we've had some beautiful leaders, no more so than those two women.
That's amazing. Well, it definitely sounds like a position where you have to be called. You have to be committed to it.
I agree. I think you do, because when you're taking care of people, especially when they're suffering from illness or decline in physical ability or their perception of loss of freedom, they're not always at their best. And we have an opportunity to help them realize their best selves in this final chapter of their life and recognize them for the individual that they are.
Yes.
Still.
Yeah.
Right? Because some people forget that.
Yeah.
And so that's so important. But sometimes, you gotta put your heavy armor on and you gotta get in there and do it.
You do. You do. Well, I love that. I love that vision, and I just got geeked when I heard about Juliette's estate planning part.
Yeah, right?
She put it in writing. She put her vision in writing, and it was implemented, and it's still in effect today. That's just amazing, that power of making it plain and doing a plan.
Exactly. I know that speaks to your heart.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It speaks to my heart.
But it's the power of one, and it's the power of purpose too.
Yes.
That's what I always value about. We can have lots of great ideas, but when we create purpose and we memorialize those through writing, through estate planning, now look at the ripple effect. 130 years later, she couldn't have even imagined what exists today, because now today we serve 400 seniors. We serve over 700 people a year, including seniors and children. We just launched a new development that's going to serve another 144 seniors in the mid-market. So these are really the sweet spot in senior living. They can't afford high-end.
Right.
But they have enough income to not qualify for government subsidized housing.
Right.
But they want to have something that is stable, safe, and secure.
Right.
And so that project's going to launch. Well, it's in construction now, but we're going to be filling it next year. And so I can't imagine that Juliette could have imagined what the world is today, but her idea is what got us here.
So you guys are still expanding. Still expanding. That's amazing.
We have over 21 to 24 acres. Listen, I make it up every time, unless I got out and walked it, with a little stick. But we're still in East Dallas. We are right on the back of Willis Winters Park, which is borders Woodrow Wilson High School, which a lot of people know where that's at.
Exactly.
The Santa Fe Trail, and then Abrams. So we're right in that sweet little spot on the edge of Lakewood, going into downtown, in a great community. We have great neighbors, and it's just a great place to be.
Well, it's literally a landmark for Dallas.
Absolutely.
I mean, at this point. And not only that, it's the vision. You guys are an award-winning community, which I had never really encountered. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of different communities.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, can I talk specifically about our most recent accomplishment, which is the I'm Still Here designation that we got? We applied for that and we received that. And I always think of it as like an award, because we were only the third one in the state of Texas to ever qualify and receive that certification. And it is a care model specifically in dementia care services. And I'm Still Here is so beautiful because it teaches us all that we're still here. No
Yes.
matter if our capacity to communicate and to relate to one another has changed
Yes.
because of cognitive decline, there's still a way for us to be connected and to be present and to have a purpose and to be valued.
That's so true.
And so I love sharing that, because that to me has been our greatest reward that we've had in the past years, because it has changed the way that we provide care.
Okay.
And it also put us on our latest Juliette mission. We want to start Dementia Friendly Dallas, and we want to bring others along to understand and recognize cognitive impairment
Yes.
in the community at large, so we can walk along with people
Right.
instead of people feeling isolated because they know that they're forgetting things or they know they
Right.
can't communicate. The last thing you want to see people do is withdraw from society.
That's so true.
But think about this. People that have gone to church their entire lives,
Right.
they realize that they can't remember names or they're not communicating, and they quit going to the very thing that serves their soul,
You're absolutely right.
right?
Yes.
And they detach themselves from the very community that would help them thrive.
Right.
But Dementia Friendly Church would tell you that we could create an opportunity for them to come to church and experience all the tradition and rituals, like the hymn singing.
Yes.
And all of my clergy friends will laugh at this. What we eliminate in Dementia Friendly Church is we take out the sermon. Because it's hard to follow, that
for them.
sequence,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But what we oftentimes retain is our procedural memory. So we
Yes.
know our favorite hymns.
They know the hymns.
How
Yes.
great they are. It's going to come
Yes.
on and everybody's going to sing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And they have that feeling of being in community. And then it also gives their families a chance to come along with them and worship and have that connection
Okay.
instead of being detached. So that's a little bit about our vision of how we're going to transform dementia services, because we're going to ask grocery store people, attorneys, clergy, everybody to come along, learn about this I'm Still Here program and how it can help transform the people that are in their community.
I love that.
Not just about getting them to Fowler. If they
Yeah.
come to Fowler, great.
Yeah.
But there's a stage for that. But
Right.
there's lots of stages that happen before that we want the community to get excited about and say, hey, this isn't scary. They don't need to be embarrassed, and we can support them and help encourage them and their caregivers.
Well, and that is so true, because I've even experienced it with my own family when my mom was at a point where she couldn't go to church anymore, and it was a little bit confusing. And I think, we can make sure that there are programs or some type of transition available for our seniors in church, because most of my clients, they just fall off. They've been a faithful member of that congregation for decades.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden no contact whatsoever. And sometimes we just kind of overlook it. And that's a great idea. A great idea.
We're excited.
Yeah.
We're excited. And if anybody wants to know anything more about it, they can come to our luncheon this year. We're going to be talking a lot about that, and that'll be happening in November. So I'm super excited about that.
Well, yeah, now you mentioned the luncheon. Let's talk about it. It's the 2021 Visionary Women's Luncheon.
Exactly.
Is it just for women, or is it focusing on women?
It focuses on women. And as I mentioned, it was born out of our love and affinity for Juliette and her vision of Fowler. And so we launched this, and we celebrate visionary women, but in many, many careers, okay? Abby Halliday was our very first visionary woman, and many of us, especially in the Dallas area, would recognize
definitely
someone to be celebrated, right? Vivian Castleberry. Many people in the Dallas area would recognize her as well. And this year we're celebrating the visionary women of Aware. So it has a dementia focus because of all of the work that they have done to further dementia education, dementia support, dementia caregiving, just awareness in general. And so we're celebrating all of those women that created Aware, because they were visionary too in creating that organization. And we're going to have Lisa Gibbons, which I think you know her.
Yes.
She is going to be our speaker, and she works in that space as well, supporting caregivers, because it's so important. It's never just
really
one
is.
person that's experiencing something. And I know you've had your experience with your mom.
Yes.
Whether it's a dementia-related experience or whether it's just a health decline and physical decline, it's always experienced by all the people that love that person as well.
That is so true.
Right?
That is so true.
And I think we overlook sometimes the importance of caregiver wellness, support, balance, encouragement.
Yes.
Because as we were talking off camera, many of these children, such as yourself, you're sandwiched right between an aging parent or parents and then children that you're raising.
That's so true.
Right? And listen, left to your own devices, those two sources would suck everything out of someone, right?
That is so
and
true.
so we want to, what I love about Lisa's work in this space is supporting caregivers, saying, hey, you got to take care of yourself so you can show up and be the best versions for all these people who need you. And that's something that we're very committed to as well. And it's all about education, Wendy. I mean, people just need to know it so that they fear it less.
Right.
And then once they fear it less, they can really embrace that it's just simple things.
Yeah, you're right.
That create caregiver support, that create a care model, and then it's just a consistency of doing those things.
And that is so true because, you know, we really look at it in our country. This is a sort of a first generation that we're actually dealing with caregivers and on this model, and as well as facilities, because I think back in my grandparents when they were alive, I mean there were some facilities but not as many, and everybody stayed, you know, they lived at home and they didn't live as long. But now we have people that are living to be older, and so these are just new issues that we do have to get educated in.
I have to tell you this funny story talking about living older. So we had a gentleman who lived with us in our independent living.
Okay.
So this is not a licensed area. And he was 101 when the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And the pandemic happened, and his daughter decided, hey, I'm going to take Dad to come home with me for a little while. Because you remember in the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know
we just didn't
if
know.
it was going to be 2 weeks or 2 years.
Right.
We know a little bit more now.
Right.
So now, you know, he's almost, 18 months older, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll say he's approaching 103. And his daughter said, I think it's time for Dad to move back in with y'all, but maybe in about 6 months. And this is the beauty of aging. If you are living your best life in a supported environment, I don't even think people realize what life expectancy is like. So when someone to us as 103 says, hey, I'm going to think about moving in about 6 months, I just love that.
I love it too.
Right?
Yeah,
it's just like outlook. A testament of what can happen, because he lived with us for many years in our community. And that's what I would say to anybody. Senior communities are so different, like you said, from what you described.
Yes.
Even I had to know that coming in as a provider early on in my career, because I had a mindset of what it was. And it wasn't something I wanted to work at, be associated with, or have anybody I love lived at.
Right.
But now I would tell you it's the best thing.
Yeah.
It's the best thing for them to be in an environment with their peers where they feel like they have connection and purpose, where they're not isolated.
Right.
Because the pandemic taught us that. Isolation is as devastating on our health as anything else.
It truly is.
Right?
It truly is.
And so we need to take those lessons from the pandemic and march forward and ask ourselves, how can we think differently? How can we reframe our thoughts? Which brings us back to our latest award nomination, which we are one of the finalists for DCEO Magazine COVID Resilience Awards.
Oh, wonderful.
So we'll find out in July, but it's, as they say, it's an honor to even be nominated. So I'm super excited about that
So
too.
what was the criteria? Was it based on your protocol during COVID?
It was based on what we did, our protocols during COVID and how we responded to it. And,
Very good.
We had 7% of our residents that did contract COVID, but had so many success stories as a result of that. And, we did a lot of things during COVID. In the beginning, I was not popular, right? Because they were like, I'm grown. I'm older than you, Nicole. You cannot make decisions like this for me. You cannot tell me that I cannot leave the campus. And I'm like, well, I think I just did. But, and so this is what we're going to do. And so, but after, that first 4-week initial period, and then when we started to see how severe the pandemic was going to impact our country, people came on board with that. And we really established a pattern very quickly in the beginning of how we were going to respond, the mindset with which we were going to adopt, and how we were going to communicate. And mindset was critical for us, Wendy, because we were all afraid. I was afraid.
Right.
I can remember, getting in my car at night after 16 hours of trying to watch the news, watch the White House briefings, read the things from the CDC, and thinking to myself, I'm not equipped. And everybody is looking at me for answers. And they're looking at me for reassurance. And I can remember laying my head down on the steering wheel, just, crying, because what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right? So it was a great
It
time
was
of
a scary
fear.
time. It was an unsure time.
Exactly.
Uncertainties.
And
Yeah.
we had to just, accept the fact, listen, I know what I know today, and we're going to make decisions today based on what we know.
Yes.
And if we know something different for tomorrow, we're going to adapt.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get too far into the future, because that's predicting a lot of things we don't know.
That
And there
is
was
so
enough
true.
people predicting
That's true.
stuff in the world,
That's
right?
right.
And we wanted to stay in that space of, we're going to make the best decisions we know how to create the best amount of safety,
Yes.
mitigate risk,
Mm-hmm.
and create the best connection that we can given the circumstances.
Yeah.
We learned so much about ourselves as an organization. I learned so much about myself as a leader. I think we learned so much about community. Our taglines at Fowler, community, choice, and connection.
Okay.
And never more were those words so prominent during the time of the pandemic.
Pandemic.
It's like you can have words on paper,
Right.
mission, values, all those things. But in situations like that, true crisis,
Yes.
where we're collectively experiencing it together,
Yes.
those words then now have power,
That's
and they
so
have
true.
greater meaning. And we leaned on those.
Yeah.
And we leaned on our visionary leader, and we leaned on the things that had happened in our seniors' past. We have people at our community that lived through the tuberculosis,
Well, that's true.
right?
Yeah.
And they were thinking, I lived through TB. I don't need a mask for this. And we're like, but you have to have one.
Right.
But it was just a great time in our community, because we adopted the mindset to say, we're going to figure it out.
Right. Right.
And that's really, if you ever wanted to know why you should come to Fowler, because we're getting up every day trying to figure it out and do it the best we can based on what we know today. And we're not too married to not be able to make adjustments if something presents itself in the future. So,
Well, that's great. That's great, and that's hopeful, because I love your positive outlook, and that the positive outlook for the entire community.
yeah.
Because that's how you can really, come to some great solutions. And we kind of talked about this earlier. You can't really come to a good conclusion out of fear.
No.
And if you're looking at an answer or looking for solutions through fear, it's just, you're not going to get anything that's going to be positive or productive.
Mm-mm.
And but those adversities, they create. Sometimes you really see what you're made of, and it also can create a platform to project from.
Absolutely.
And so, and I'd like to know a little bit more how you got started in senior care.
So I always say by accident. It was not planned.
Okay.
And I shared with you beforehand that I thought I was going to be on a corporate trajectory. I believe I used the word corporate titan.
Yes.
But, so I really got here by accident, because someone that I had worked for found out that I was in transition because of the big organization that I had worked with is closed, and my husband didn't want to move to New Jersey. And so my former boss calls me up and says, hey, can you come help me out? I'm working at this nursing home in Dallas. And I was like, and no, like, I'm not working for a nursing home. I mean, maybe you didn't get the memo, but I'm going to be a big thing in corporate America.
Right.
And he's like, just come on, you don't even have a job right now. And I was like, fine, I'll go. And so I went, and that was 21 years ago. But the reason why I stayed, and here's what I could not have known, and this is what I would say to anybody contemplating a career in aging services. You just cannot imagine what it's like to look in the face of the people that you are serving, and to have them look back at you and be so grateful and so thankful that you're there, and thankful for simple things, like just showing up and listening and caring. And at the end of the day, I'm getting paid to be with people. In relationship with people. It doesn't mean I don't do other things, right? That I have to have a skill set for, but it's all shrouded in this connection that I get with elders and with the team of people that we've assembled that work with our elders. And I love people in general. I will talk to somebody probably when I leave this building in the parking lot, because I just love to be in conversation with people. But elders, now those are special folks, because they've built a life. They have lived through some stuff. In the spirit of, nothing is new in the world kind of thing. I have the greatest council members there, if you will, that I can go to for advice,
Yes.
that I lean on.
Yeah.
When I think about the support that I got from our residents during the worst times of the pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
that were there to say, listen, I've been through these hardships.
Right.
I lost friends.
Right.
You know, sharing stories of the tuberculosis epidemic, the wars that they
Yes.
had been through, their family tragedies.
Yeah.
You get so deep and so connected with people in a short amount of time, and hearing who they've been and who they still are and how they've navigated life has been the greatest gift to me. And that's why I stayed, because you cannot get that
You can't.
in a corporate job. There are lovely,
Yeah.
beautiful things about corporate America, right?
Right,
Some
right.
that I still miss.
Right.
Okay. But the connection that I get and the love that is returned to me from the love that I put in it's unbounded, is the best way I can describe that. And
Yes.
it grows exponentially each year that I continue to pursue this career. And that just makes my heart overflow.
That's a very good point, because I look back on my career and I think about, you know, it's one thing to draft a will or do a Medicaid planning for a family, but what I remember most are the conversations that I've had with my clients and hearing about the Battle of the Bulge, World War II, and just, you know, being married for 75 years, you know, and those human connections. And that's what it's all about in any career. It's not the paperwork.
Exactly.
And you're right, those are things we have to get done, but it's that human connection, and that's what I would always remember. And it's been the biggest impact on me too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
That's awesome.
Well, let's talk about any closing thoughts or tips you would like to leave our audience today about Juliette Fowler Communities, about Nicole Gann. I'm so glad we're getting to see who you are, because it's, you know, it's rare do you get a chance to see the person behind the organization. I know sometimes you go to a company, you never see the head person, the administrator. You just see the front people, and you never know what they're really made of and what the organization stands for. So thank you so much for coming on the show. But
my pleasure.
what closing thoughts would you like to leave our audience today?
You know, I always like have so many, and I know we don't have all the time in the world, but I want people to really embrace this stage of life that we have with elders.
Yes.
I want elders to embrace it. I want their children to embrace it.
Yes.
I want them to think of communities like Juliette Fowler, but especially like Juliette Fowler, as an extension of home.
Okay.
It's just the next step of home.
Okay.
I want them to really embrace what's possible
Yes.
if you are in a supportive environment that supports all the dimensions of your wellness, spirituality, physical wellness, all of the things,
Yes.
right? And Fowler is such a beautiful place. We say love grows there all the time, but it's really true. And it's a
Yeah.
community of like-minded individuals, whether it's residents or families or teammates. What you see in me is a reflection of what exists at Fowler. There's so many Nicoles at Fowler, at
That's
every
awesome.
level.
Yes.
And I get the privilege of representing us to a larger community, right?
Yes.
And saying, hey, come to Fowler, and this is what we stand for. But we're just doing the simple things. I mean, when you think about love, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the simplest, greatest gift that we've ever been given in our life.
That is so
in
true.
my life. And that's driven by my own personal values in Christ.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I love because he loved me.
Yes.
And that's the message that reverberates at Fowler, regardless of anyone's faith affiliation. But it is a community that is built and driven on love. And so I just would say embrace aging, embrace what's possible. Wisdom happens in the aging process.
Yeah.
Right? And we need to look for those opportunities to really celebrate those elders.
Yes, we do.
And at Fowler, we do the bookends. So we're celebrating elders, but we're also advocating for children. And we didn't get to talk about that as much today, but check out our website at Juliette Fowler Communities.
Let's talk about it right quick, though. I do want to hear about that, the children.
Oh, I would
and
love
what you guys are doing.
just a little snippet. So we have a program that we just launched last October with the governor's office.
Okay.
And it is called our Youth Support Center. And it is supporting children ages 12 to 24 who are working to actively escape sex trafficking.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you know this, but Dallas is number 2 in the nation as far as sex trafficking.
Yes.
And so we have a lot of folks out there in need who are trying to have a better life and a better outcome.
Right.
And so we're doing that in partnership with the governor's office. They have a big initiative on reducing sex trafficking in the state. So that's our latest effort. We also have a young women's residency program. So women ages 18 to 24 who have been victims of homelessness, abuse, neglect, have aged out of foster care. They can live with us in residency with our seniors for up to 2 years.
Wow.
So we have 7 young women that live with us on our campus.
Okay.
And then we also support right now probably 46 foster families in our foster and adoption outreach program. So we recruit foster parents, we support them, we train them, and hopefully find forever homes for children who are out there, you know, looking for that family connection and that love. So the youth side of our business is thriving as much as the senior side.
The senior side.
And, you know, that's why I always say the bookends. When you're starting life and in the end stages of life. And there's a lot of beauty that happens when you're serving both those spectrums of the population. There's a lot of wisdom that comes out of our seniors, and there's a lot of wisdom that's born in really hard situations for our children, right? But being able to be loved on and being in community with one another, there's something beautiful happens when you bring the generations together. And so we're so committed to advocating for both sides, and then also creating opportunities for other communities like us, like a senior living community, to see the benefit of intergenerational activities and experiences, because there's so much out there that says that they both thrive when they're together.
When they're together. Yeah, I love that. And just seeing that, you know, put together, because I see that sometimes with my caregivers, with my mom, they love talking to her and getting advice. And most times she's just listening, but just talking to her about what's going on in their lives and their children, and just getting that older person's perspective. And but I also like the way you guys are really valuing life. I mean, it's not just, I mean, I think we're in a society today where the elder person is not necessarily, their value of their life is not necessarily promoted and acknowledged. And it's so important. You know, they are still here, and they are very valuable to us. And as a culture, you know, we can learn so much from them. It's just a gold mine of information and wisdom on how to just make it through tough times and just living life.
Absolutely. So well said. I mean, we have to remember, they are us.
They really are.
They are just us 30 years from now. Right. But I mean, I have executives and attorneys, architects, social workers, teachers, police officers. These are the people that, in the large part, built the communities that we enjoy today.
You're absolutely right.
They're us.
They're us.
And we have to be willing to accept that. And so any resistance we have to celebrating them is probably a resistance for us in aging.
You're right.
Right? Because it always comes back to us in a way, right? Our experience. And so I want everybody to lean in to aging, to see the beauty of it, to see what's possible. And if you don't know what's possible, come hang out with us at Fowler. We'll be happy to show you, and you'll have a great time, and it'll be awesome.
Well, we're going to have to come out and hang out with you guys for sure. Now, tell us about, what are the dates for the Visionary Luncheon?
It's in November.
It's in November? Okay.
Wendy, I should know the date, and I'm embarrassed for myself that I don't have the exact date.
No,
I want to say it's November 8th.
Okay.
But listen, I might be lying, people, so you have to check out our website.
It's sometime in November, and so we'll get that information and make that available.
It's going to be at the Omni. Like I said, Lisa Gibbons is going to be our MC and our special speaker. We're going to be honoring the visionary women of Aware. We also have a student that we honor from TCU. That's the Erica McKenzie Award, that's named after someone that was very devoted to our campus, another visionary woman. And so it's just a beautiful beautiful time to come together. And all the information can be found at fowlercommunities.org. And so we would love people to join us. We would love people to sponsor us. We would love people to do all the things that help us continue to thrive and serve. Because as a non-for-profit, listen, the game is always out there raising awareness, raising funds to keep evolving our care models. I mean, and that's what it's always about. And so every opportunity I have to tell the story and bring new members to what we call the Fowler fam, the Fowler family, then I'm here for it. And it's just been my pleasure to be here with you today. And
well, thank you.
I love
your
book,
on.
and I'm going to tell everybody about it. I think it's a great roadmap for people coming into communities such as ours and what they need to think about and plan for. And then they won't have to be afraid of anything.
That's
because
right.
they have it all taken care
They've
of.
got the information. Yeah. And that's what fear usually is that, false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
But once you get the information, you're able to make great decisions. And I'll just go ahead and talk about this. I've gotten questions about, Wendy, how can I get your book? Because I hadn't been promoting it on the previous episodes as much, but you can get the book, and it does help answer questions about pre-planning. What can you do before you get to the crisis point? How to have the conversation with your family, and how to get mom and dad organized. And this is based on 20 plus years of practicing law as an elder law attorney, as well as being caregiver for my mom. So you can purchase the book on Amazon and Target, Walmart, 400 different places where books are sold. And hopefully you'll read it like Nicole did and get some good information from there.
I think it's excellent. Listen, at 21 years in working in this business, and it's the best resource that I have seen to date in my career. And I'm serious. It's so easily digested and it's so well organized. So I would just say, go get it, folks. If you've got people aging and you're aging, get this book.
Well, I want it to be an easy read and not a law book, because I can fall asleep and yawn on a law book myself sometimes. So I want it to be an easy read. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We've told you how to get in contact with Nicole and the fam over at Juliette Fowler.
Yes.
But if you decide to contact them, tell them that Wendy sent you. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, like us, LinkedIn. We're in all those venues as well for social media. And I appreciate you watching our podcast. And don't forget to check on the senior just to make sure they're okay, because they just may brighten your day. Thank you.